Hey, Eugene. My name's Justin. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Nice to meet you. I like your setup.
Oh, thank you. That's the second time that's happened
Yeah,
today.
the
It's,
color seamlesses are great. The camera quality is crisp.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you are looking crisp as well and looking fly as always.
Oh, thank you.
I was so pleasantly surprised to hear your voice in this film and also to see your look. The character of Ambrosius very much looked like you. I was like, am I imagining this? But I think I read somewhere that they very much designed the character around you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually how I was initially brought onto the film, which is wild. The production designer, Aiden, he actually was suggested me as a reference because when they switched, the major character design change from the graphic novel was actually Ambrosius. They decided they'd like him to be of East Asian descent to explore what that looked like. And he was familiar with my coming out video, knew like, that's a gay Asian man I can get behind. No pun intended. But that's why they said, well, I guess if he's part of the design, then like maybe we should reach out and see if he can audition. And that's how I came onto the project. Yeah.
Well, so beyond that, what else drew you into wanting to join Nimona as Ambrosius Goldenloin? That's a mouthful, by the way.
Yeah. No pun intended. I need to stop. ND Stevenson was the main draw for me, actually. I was a big fan of She-Ra, and I also had read the graphic novel. So knowing that this was a queer creative voice that was being translated to screen, I mean, that's all you really needed to tell me. And that's something that's like, it's kind of hard to find that sometimes, even in the animated world. So knowing that, he was also an integral part of the process was the main selling point for sure.
For sure. You always want the creator's vision to be cemented in, the adaptation. And I think that this is very much a part of the celebration of this movie. I know I'm going to ask you a question. It might seem a little deep.
I love deep questions.
I know a lot of people talk about finding a character's voice, but I feel like for this movie, it's really about finding a character's soul. So I wanted to know, how did you go about finding the soul of Ambrosius and his journey through this movie?
Yeah, it was a lot of props to the directors, Nick and Troy, who were so sensitive to also knowing that, they wanted to draw out a very authentic experience from me. I had initially kind of come in with something a little more like this, and it was like not the vibe. It was me posturing something more cartoonish and heroic. And I think that was the big thing was they said, like, you yourself are informing so much about this character who, in the end, what was discovered was, he is technically the hero of the realm. He's this like princely character, but he's also goofy and really soft. And immediately you can tell he's loving towards Ballister, and that never changes in the film. Like, all of the struggle he's feeling is just, he's on the job, he has to abide by this institution, he has to do everything the system tells him to, but then he's also deeply in love with someone who he can't be with. And so that struggle and that internal like strife that he has is something that I just highly relate to. It's been a lot of key moments of my life. So being able to like inform the character that way, that was like the main thing about finding his soul. I think his soul is one of deep, constant conflict, but also he doesn't hide it. He's very honest.
Yes, absolutely. And I love there's a moment with the director when the director asks him, how are you, or how are you feeling? And you see this moment where he just breaks and he just lets loose, but it's all internalized. And I thought that was such a beautiful moment to kind of capture this idea of, what's perceived and the reality, and that sort of, and how Ambrosius is kind of living in that realm, if you will, of trying to deal with both sides of his life. And I think that's great.
That scene really summed up everything I said, that idea of the inner conflict.
Exactly. And I thought that moment really spoke to that. I wanted to know, and this is a fun question now, let's say you had Nimona's shape-shifting powers.
Yeah.
If you could live as someone for one day, anyone, who would it be and why?
Probably my boyfriend, so I can finally understand what he says about me if it's true.
I love it.
Yeah, he's always like, you don't pick up your shit. And I'm like, I don't see the mess you're talking about. And he says, this is clearly messy, Eugene. And I said, we have very different definitions of mess. He's probably right. That's why I think it's a kind of a losing battle going into that shapeshift. I'd be like, shit, I'm a fucking wreck.
You would start to see perspective, right? You would start to see the perspective.
Yeah.
I think
honestly, I think it'd be healthy for anyone in a relationship to make that their choice.
I totally agree with that. Listen, you've talked so much about the sort of spirit and the soul of, relating to Ambrosia. Is there anything that you're going to be taking away from this character? Something that you just might have a different outlook on based on playing this character?
Yeah, I know I shouldn't bleach my hair, even though I might want to, because I already see what I look like with it. But also, like, Ambrosius is such a, he's already so close to me in a lot of ways. I think what is really inspiring about the film is Nimona herself. Like, that's what I take away. I love the energy Nimona brings. I feel like Nimona is like, all three of the main leads have a lot of inspirational aspects about them, but Nimona being such a messy, chaotic gremlin of a character who's like fighting the system, but then also can switch to being very, very vulnerable and true to herself. That's something that I want more in my life. The chaos with the truth. And just a little bit of, like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, let's destroy some shit. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Let's get metal. I'm totally with you, man.
Absolutely.
I'm totally with you. Eugene, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the Geekcentric podcast. You're fantastic.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see what you do next, man.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
All right. Later. Bye. Hey, Riz. My name's Justin. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making the time, dude. It's an absolute honor to have the opportunity to talk to you. So when I saw this in April, I didn't have very much information about this movie, but when I heard your voice, I was like, that has to be Riz Ahmed. And I was pleasantly surprised. Is this your first time doing voice work like this for like an animated feature? Or
it is. I've done some kind of short bits before for a feature like this, but I did do the voice for the animated feature Flea, which we also produced with our company Left Handed. But different in a way because that was documentary, different process. But yes, I guess it technically is my second animated feature.
Well, I know we're here to talk about Nimona, but Flea was outstanding. Probably one of my favorites from the year in the animated category.
Glad.
But I have to know, what was it about Ballister that made you want to join Nimona and take on that role?
It was really the way that Nick Bruno and Troy Quayne, our amazing directors, had laid out the vision for this character. First of all, they opened my eyes to the world of Nimona. I wasn't aware of the graphic novel. I wasn't aware of this incredible thing that ND had created and how beloved it was. So once I was onto that, I was like, wow. But before I even had a chance to get off the call and Google all that, I was like, I'm in. And that's because Troy and Nick were like, this is who this character is. This is how he feels like an outsider, how he has imposter syndrome, how he's fighting for acceptance, but in the end, he has to learn to accept himself. And I said, wow, I can relate to that. I think a lot of us can relate to that. And I haven't seen that actually, that story being told as often as I would like, certainly not in animation and in such a fresh way, in such a fresh world. So it was the character, it was their vision. And then once I got to digging, it was the world of Nimona.
Yes. Right. Yeah, no, that actually answers my second question, because I feel like, it's not about finding a voice. It's finding the soul of the character.
Yes.
Because each character is on a journey. So I feel like, as you've just mentioned, relating it back to your own personal life and connecting with that. I think that's sort of how you found the soul, because there's such an authenticity to Bal's journey throughout this movie that feels relatable in a lot of ways. So is there anything that you are going to take away from your time with Bal? Something that's inspired you in any way?
Yeah, I feel like something that I learned from Ballister is to not give up hope. Sometimes I think when the world seems so unfair, we can just kind of think, well, forget it. But I think what's amazing about Ballister is he doesn't give up in trying to do the right thing and trying to hope that things can be different. And I think we all need a bit of that energy in these crazy times.
Absolutely. Well said, man. Last question here. If you had Nimona shape-shifting powers, who would you want to live for as a day?
Wow. I probably want to live as, this is a cheat answer. This is like wishing for more wishes. Probably want to live as Nimona for a day. She's just so fun. She's just so cool. She's just got great one-liners, and I'm just her biggest fan.
Riz, thank you so much. Again, it's an absolute honor to have you on the Geekcentric podcast. Hope you have a great rest of your day, man.
Appreciate it.
Hey, Chloe. My name's Justin. I'm from the Geekcentric podcast. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I saw this movie back in April, and I had no information. I went in very blind. I just knew it was an animated movie based on a graphic novel. And I gotta say, I was incredibly surprised to hear your voice and very delighted. I wanted to know, what was it about this movie that made you want to jump on and be a part of it?
I think the source material, going back to ND Stevenson and what he created as his college thesis, which then became a webcomic, and then from the webcomic, became this graphic novel that was beloved and had this cult following. There's not often times in animation that you get really strong source material like that. Usually you get like a sketch of a character and you're like, okay, I think I know what we're doing here, so I'm just gonna go for it. But the opportunity to play Nimona was a really tall order, and rising to that occasion was one that I was really excited about.
Yeah, and I think you delivered.
Thank you.
You were outstanding in this movie. And I know a lot of people when they talk about voice acting, it's like finding the voice of the character, but it feels like a lot of the characters are on a journey, and it's about finding the character's soul.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, how did you find Nimona's soul?
I think it was an exciting kind of element of trying to find her soul in the fact that she's also a shapeshifter. She is so fluid in who she is, and that she doesn't want to be labeled for being one thing because she literally isn't one thing. But I think at her core, there's a vulnerability to her that I really wanted to capture. And there's a lot of chaos to her. There's a lot of punk, a lot of rage and stuff like that. And so I kind of had to stretch the rubber band to see, how it would snap back. And that was something that we really played with in the booth. Nick and Troy, the directors, pushed me, and were not afraid to kind of let me rip and go for it. And there was a lot of me that came through, which was fun to play with, and a whole lot of improv and comedy mixed in with all that vulnerability.
Yeah, I have to say, I think the voice acting, it all just connects back to the original voices. Like Riz, is Ballister, Eugene is Ambrosius, and you are definitely Nimona to the core. And I love that you guys were able to bring your own personalities to these characters, because it just jumps off the screen. And I think that's why it's different. It's not characters or caricatures, they're people, and I think they're very relatable. When you talked about recording in the sound booth, were you on your own, or I know it's just during the pandemic, did you guys get to do any records together collectively?
No, we were never around each other. I still haven't met Eugene. I met Riz once at the Met Gala last year, which was really funny. And we started recording this in 2019. So he and I weren't around each other. We didn't talk. I only kind of had him as a voice in my head when they would show us snippets after we had recorded stuff of our voices together. And ultimately I was just working opposite Nick and Troy, the directors. So it was a really specific experience, and that kind of is true for a lot of animation. But I think when you couple that with the pandemic and recording this in your closet with clothes around you for soundproofing, it was, I think, even more so aids to the vulnerability and the emotion within the chaos and excitement of the project.
Yeah, you can really find a place with that, and in the closet with clothes, and really going there and so on. So then again, seeing this come together, it must have been pretty outstanding, right? Like, to think that you were doing this in your closet, and now to see how the voices work together. Was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, this was something that we had been recording for so long, and we were almost at the end of it. And then, Big Sky got shut down, and, they weren't going to go any further with the project and put it out, which was, it was so heartbreaking. And we all knew how important this was for people to see. And then when we found out that it had a new home and it was going to be on Netflix, I think the biggest surprise was just hearing that we were going to be able to finish it. And when I saw it all put together, I think there are so many moments in the booth where I was like, did I just make the biggest fool out of myself and just ruin my career in that moment? And then I watched the movie and I was like, no, it works.
And it
Thank
works.
God it works.
Yeah,
It really, really
works.
works.
It totally works. Yeah, I could totally see those moments when you were riffing. I think they really do stand out. We're talking about Nimona, shape-shifting powers. If you had her shape-shifting powers and you could live as someone for a day, who would that be and why?
Oh my Lord. Okay, as someone. I haven't gotten that question yet.
Well,
I've gotten animals, but someone, I would probably say maybe Amelia Earhart.
Oh, I love that.
It'd be kind of cool. She's
that would be great.
pretty badass, and maybe find out what happened. Where's that plane?
Hey, I'd love to see you play her.
Where's that
in a
plane,
movie.
Amelia?
That'd be great.
I wish I could play her. I think she was really tall, and I'm 5'5".
Yeah.
So they could put me on stilts, but I don't know if
Right.
I'm pushing enough height for that.
Hey, if they could make Gandalf look bigger than those hobbits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
That's gonna be me, except
Okay.
I'll be the Hobbit, but it's okay. It's okay.
Now my last question. I know everyone's talking about how relatable and how connected they are to Nimona. I wanted to know for yourself, is there anything that you're going to take away from Nimona that you're going to apply to yourself that inspires you in a way to like live your life?
Definitely. I think that Nimona's not afraid to be exactly who she is and present herself exactly, as the person that she is. And I think that's something that I really respect and something that I really connect to, and something that I want to, continue to bring forward in my life, in how people perceive me and how I show myself to others, and to not be afraid to just be exactly who I am and stand up for what I believe in.
I love that. That is a great way to end this interview. Thank you so much, Chloe. You are outstanding. Another badass character. I love you in Kick-Ass as well. So I think that there's some parallels there. So, but thank you for joining us on the Geekcentric podcast. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you too.